I was trying to look kind of Darkling inspired, but now I look dead. Hey everyone, it's me Lainey and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a review on Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I mention this book quite often on my channel in tags and Top 5 Wednesdays and stuff, but I've never actually really given a review on it. So I recently reread the book and decided to do a full review on it. First, let me tell you what this book is about. So Shadow and Bone is the first book in the Grisha trilogy, and it is set in a world where some people have special magical gifts and they are called the Grisha. The story takes place in this country called Ravka that is divided in two parts by this huge shadow fold made of pure darkness where creepy creatures live and the light never touches. Nobody knows how to get rid of the shadow fold. It's very dangerous, it's really posing a problem, and basically everyone is kind of waiting for the Sun Summoner, which is a Grisha that can summon light and can use their power to destroy the shadow fold once and for all. And we follow the story of an orphan named Alina who finds out that she is the Sun Summoner, and from there on, her story starts. After rereading this book, I stick with my original rating of 4 stars because I enjoyed this book very much. And after rereading this book, I think I finally realized why I like this book so much, and that is because everything that I like in fantasy books, this book has it. So how I'm going to do this review is basically I'm just going to give you some reasons why I like this book so much, so you can kind of decide for yourself if those are things that you might like as well. And then I'm also going to give some things that I didn't really like about the book. And then at the end, I'll have a small spoilery section for the people who have already read this book. So the first thing that I really liked about this book is the setting. I always really like it when fantasy books take place in a country that is inspired by some kind of foreign culture, not the typical medieval setting, but something else. So Shadow and Bone, for example, is set in Ravka, which is loosely inspired by Russian culture. The second thing that I always really like in fantasy might sound a little bit odd, but it's just something that I really like, and that is when there's a magic system that works with different classes, how different people all have different gifts. In this book you have the Grisha, and these Grisha can all have specific powers. So there are element wielders, there are Grisha who can take control of your organs and your blood, there are healers, and on top of the hierarchy there is the Darkling, who can summon darkness, and the Sun Summoner, who can summon the light. Speaking about the Sun Summoner, the next thing that I really liked is something that maybe not everyone likes, and that is the whole girl finding out she has a special ability. And I know that a lot of people are kind of tired of seeing it everywhere, but I still really enjoy it, and I just love reading about a story where a normal girl finds out she has some kind of super special power. Which does bring me to my next point, and that is I always really like stories that are a little bit morally gray. It's not just good against evil, and what I really liked about this book is that you don't really know who the bad guys are and who the good guys are until the very end. Even though it features a girl figuring out she has special powers, it's definitely not a superhero story. It's really just a story about this girl that figures out she has special powers and then has to decide who she's going to use those powers for, because basically everyone wants her on her side. And it's not the whole, oh, you're so special and now she has to use her special power to defeat the evil bad guy and be a hero. No, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Another thing that I really like in books is anti-heroes or anti-villain, and this book very definitely features an anti-villain called the Darkling, and I found him just to be such an interesting character. Villains are usually my favorite characters in books, and this one is definitely one of my favorite villains. The type of villains that I always really like are the idealistic villains. You know, those villains that genuinely think they're doing something good to the world with their evil plans in an almost naive way, and the Darkling is definitely one of those idealistic villains. And the last thing that I really liked is, for some reason, I had never noticed how funny Alina, our main character, is. She is like super witty and snarky, and I really like that, and for some reason I didn't even remember that for the first time. But while rereading this, I was like, wow, Alina, you're funny. So those were the things that I specifically really liked about this book. So if those are things that you tend to like in books, then definitely give this one a try. There are though some things that I didn't really like about this book. First thing that I was kind of annoyed by in Shadow and Bone was the high school-y atmosphere that there was sometimes. There's a lot of talk about not knowing who to sit with during lunch breaks, or being very insecure about that guy not liking you, constant remarks on other people's looks, hating on a pretty girl for the sole reason that that girl is pretty and slutty, and I don't like it when things like that happen in books. I'm pretty sure things like this could be very relatable to some people, but I don't really like reading about that. If I want to read about those high school insecurities, I will read a contemporary, and this is a fantasy. And the second and also last thing that I didn't really like about this book is our love interest, Mal. I just don't like him, but I'll get into that into some spoiler stuff. The romance is a best friend turned love interest romance, and I don't tend to like romances like that, but if you do, then you might enjoy Mal, but I didn't like him. Oh, and I forgot to mention something, but this does not just count for the first book, but also for the other 2 books in the series. Leigh Bardugo is so good at epic finales and endings to a book, and I actually have to admit that I almost cried during the last few pages, which didn't happen the first time that I read this book, but the second time I was tearing up. I was tearing up. So I would highly recommend reading this book if those things that I mentioned sound interesting to you. And if you have already read this book, I will go into a small spoiler section because I do have to say some things that I noticed upon rereading this book. So if you haven't read the book, goodbye. Come back when you've read the book. If you have read the book, you can stay because spoilers will be everywhere. Okay. So there are just a few things that I want to say that I noticed after rereading this book, especially if you've already read the entire series and you know everything that is going to happen, you know that the Darkling is really evil. If you reread this and you read those first 200 pages already knowing that the Darkling is going to betray Alina, you suddenly see every hidden meaning after everything he says. The first time reading that, you don't notice it, but if you reread this, suddenly you see that he is saying so many manipulative things just to get Alina at his side. In general, rereading a book that has a very mind-blowing plot twist is such a revelation because suddenly you see all the hints. All the hints. And the second thing that I briefly wanted to touch on is that I never really understood why I didn't like Mal, but after rereading this, I do. The moment that really doesn't sit well with me is that moment where he sees Alina standing next to the Darkling doing her demonstration of her power with her beautiful clothes, and Xenia that made her really pretty standing next to the Darkling being all that, and he gets really angry at her for being different and being with the Darkling. And like, hey Mal, you did not look at this girl. For 10 years, you gave her no attention, you took her for granted. You yourself just went with all these girls, and then one time when you see Alina living the good life, getting attention from this really handsome boy, you get angry at her for not being the way that she used to be. I was just like, really? Really? This is why I tend to not like those best friend turned love interests kind of stories, because most of the time it's like the boy doesn't even look at the girl for like so long, and then suddenly he gets really jealous and being like, no, but you belong to me. And I was like, I'm sorry, but you should have done something 5 years ago because it's too late now. And that is everything that I want to say in this small spoilery section. I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what you thought of this book and your feelings and everything, and I will see you soon with another video. Goodbye!
I'm a puppet on a string, Tracy Island, time traveling diamond. Could a sheep heartaches come to find you?